All right. Well, welcome again to From There to Here. I'm your host, Lawrence Temple Jr. And today I have a blast from the past host, I guess I'll say. I met our host when she was a student of mine in middle school. She was 13, 14 years old, eighth grade. And now she's doing great things as an author, as a speaker. I don't want to say too much because I want her to kind of introduce herself. But this is Miss Santina Proctor, and she is our host on From There to Here. So let's just jump into it. Miss Proctor, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. This is an honor for me. And I'll talk more about that as we go along. I like to start off with having our guests do what I call the elevator speech, which is if you're in an elevator with someone and you had seconds to boil your whole life down into a few words, which is unfair. But if you had to do that, what would be your elevator speech?
Well, my elevator speech is first and foremost, I am a God-fearing woman. I am a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a person that believes that life is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it. And I take my lessons and I learn from them.
That is excellent. That is as concise and yet wide-ranging elevator speech as I've heard in a minute. And it's interesting that the professional part of your life was at the end, if at all, in your speech, that everything else you valued most came in front of that. That's very interesting.
Oh, family is first and foremost to me. Is God, then family, and then anything else that God has me to do.
Now, going off of that, so what do you, I know I've been following some things that you do as far as social media, but of course that never gives someone a full picture of anybody. On your professional public side, I guess, could you talk to the people about what it is you do?
Well, so professionally, I am a life coach, and I like to say I help people go from where they are to where they want to be. So I'm a guide. I pray before each session that God uses me as a vessel to help guide the coachee. So I'm a guide. That's it.
Guide. That's a common thing. I've had coaches, psychiatrists, and even people whose day job doesn't sound like a guide, but when you kind of boil down what they do, many of them guiding people from one state to another. What would eighth grade, 13-ish-year-old Santina say if she could get a glimpse and see what you're doing now? What would she think of that in the scope of how she could think at 13? What would she think or say?
Um, I think the 13-year-old me would be blown away. Um, Surprised to see how my life has unfolded. And I think the best takeaway to say is that seasons change. Seasons change.
Mm. How would you describe, because this show is called From There to Here, so the journey is the big part of what we get into. What season, if we can say it that way, would you say you were in? I'm piggybacking somewhat on your book, which I want you to have a chance to talk about. But in the early part of the book, you talk about the season that you were in as a youngster. Can you describe the season you were in as a youngster, as talked about in your book, versus whatever season you'd say you were in now?
As a child, I would say I was in a season of doubt, of uncertainty, inability to receive love, self-sabotage, feeling unworthy. Yeah, that's how I felt as a child.
Okay. Do you, with your, looking back now, what brought up, when you mentioned self-sabotage and unworthiness, which I have found a lot working with teenagers, at least for you or for young people in general, thoughts of not being good enough and self-sabotaging, where does that come from for kids in general, or at least for your own life? What would you say?
It starts in the home. It starts from your parental figure. So regardless if you live with your biological parents or not, I believe your thoughts and your beliefs are embedded in you from home. So what you hear at home or what you don't hear, it really makes a big difference.
what's the don't hear? What is it that kids should hear that they often don't hear and that puts them in a negative path?
That it's okay that you aren't defined by your grades, because grades are so important in society and in school. Like, okay, you didn't do well in school, but that's not you as a whole person. So try to figure out who you are as a whole person and give those pats on the back in other areas. Like, this child may be creative, the child may be
Good.
a great speaker at that time, the child may be an artist, but when it comes to a test, the child might not do so well. So don't just say what they don't do, always recognize what they do. um, I did well in school as far as academically, so I didn't have an issue with people not people saying that, was my grades and stuff, but it was, I wanted to be more than that. I wanted to know that I was okay just being me. I was welcome in the home that I lived in. So
Okay.
it really matters what the parents do or do not say.
Um, I've talked to several of my guests here who had, and some of them had some difficulties as children as far as what they didn't get from their parents, that type of thing. And some people carry, bitterness as adults as to, what I didn't get, or I would have been farther if my parents XYZ. How have you processed that? Looking at anything maybe you didn't get or whatever, and I was an adult. How'd you process that
Mm.
in a healthy way?
Well, I don't blame my parents for anything that has occurred in my life, because I come to learn my parents did the best they could with what they had. So the experiences they had, they gave them to me. And if they were healthy or unhealthy, they gave me what they had. They probably could have sought out different resources or things to make themselves better, but they didn't. So I don't blame my parents for any negative things that have happened in my life. I take full ownership for decisions that I made, because I'm responsible for me. At some point in your life, you got to decide that, you know what, I didn't have the best childhood, or I didn't have a mother, or whatever you did not have. How
Okay.
can you grow from that? How can you grow from it?
See, okay, I see that. Because I do see, especially particularly living in the working in the school system and dealing with younger people, I think sometimes younger people misunderstand acknowledging that maybe there's something they didn't get, but maybe I think they take it too far an extent and kind of make that kind of an excuse for not moving forward. It's some just out of
Right.
misunderstanding, and I see that a lot.
I agree. What I do now in most situations is I try to understand the intent of someone. Like, were they intentionally trying to harm me or
Okay.
treat me wrong? Like, were they being malicious, or was it out of ignorance? Now, some people are truly malicious and they want to harm you and they don't mean you well, but some people really don't know any better.
Okay. Okay, that's big. I think we tend to take everybody as doing it on purpose, and that's not always the
Hmm.
case. Well, now
Yeah.
I asked you about the season you were in as a child and a young person. Compare it. Talk to us about the season that you are in now and have been in these last few years.
Oh, in a season of freedom, of peace, of exhilaration. I feel energized. I'm open to receive love. Um, I feel amazing. I feel like I have a real relationship with God. Um, I'm thriving. Yeah.
Where did this come from, and when did it show up in your life? Because the way you describe the season now doesn't sound like a season that most people have been in their whole life, if at all. When did this
Oh
come
no.
from? Where did this come from? Talk to us, please.
So it's constant, but it actually began in 2019. I lost my dad in June of 2019, and I went into depression
Okay.
for several months, because I figured since I had already lost my mother that I would be okay with losing my father. Like, it wouldn't be a big deal. Like, I don't know why I thought that, but that's what
Okay.
I thought. So I really didn't embrace it. And when I found out my dad passed, I went to work the next day. Like, okay, he's gone. I was sad, but I just always been the type to keep going. And that was a mistake. So I was present, but I was not present.
Okay.
And I ended up going to a retreat in Northern Virginia called Healing Care, and it's about grief and just finding out who you are and how you move forward. And there is where I met Jesus and I gained a personal relationship with God.
Hmm.
And since then, it's been like on and popping. Like it just been good, but it's a constant journey. It's not just one day of feeling good. It's constant because that's the state I want to be in.
Okay. Well, now for you in this season of freedom, which doesn't sound like a season as in a temporary, it sounds like it's your new state of being. Well, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people they make a progress, they get free of drugs or depression or whatever, and it stops with them. But from what I'm seeing in your presence on social media and stuff, you are now taking the state that you're in and you're doing things outward with it. So could you talk to us about what you're doing outwardly as far as your book, your speaking, and the other outward things you do?
I'm living life for Santina. So basically, the purpose that God has for me, which I believe is to help other people get to where they need to be and ultimately draw them to Him. I want His light to shine through me so people be like, dang, who does she serve? So it's like, in my opinion, I'm young, I'm a millennial, and people figure like you can't have this relationship with God because you're going to miss something.
Okay.
So I want to outwardly show that like you can be fly and you can love God and you need to recognize Him for the things that He has done. So outwardly, I want to continue to write books. I want to continue to coach people and to speak and let them know that I always feel like I've looked good on black and white, like on paper, like my resume has always been pretty good. But now I'm actually feeling and living what the paper says.
That's there's always at least one quote that's pretty big in every interview, and that's the one I want to underline and highlight right there. That apparently there's a difference between looking good on paper versus it being internal and real, and that you're actually wearing in your own life. That's pretty big stuff.
Absolutely. It's easy for people to get caught up in even social media. Like I feel like I do a lot on social media, which I'm taking a break from right now. Um, Post my birthday, so I'm doing like a 30-day break from it so I can come back purposeful. I don't want
Yes.
to just be there for no reason. So I think when people post and someone posts a perfect picture in our eye, but how many times did it get to take that perfect picture? And then they still don't even feel good about that picture. So for me, everything I post, I literally feel good about it. Like I feel good. What I say is what I live. The pictures I post, if they have flaws or not, I'm like, this is me. And I respect myself. So I think that I should show up as my authentic self.
I, that, that is very powerful, particularly since we both worked in the school system. I think about young people, middle school age and teenagers, and how they haven't yet learned that lesson between the fairy tale picture of social media versus real life for the poster or for the reader.
Mm-hmm.
I know on your and again, since we're not in the same town or anything, through social media is how I've learned about some of the things you do. You post frequently about your husband, and which is one of the best things I see that you post because I'm a big fan of marriages and relationships and stuff. Can you can you talk about your husband for us for a little bit, please?
Um, if I could describe my husband in one word, I would say non-judgmental. He is so open for me to be who I am as a person. He has seen me grow. He has seen me in my strengths. He has seen me in my weaknesses. And he has never judged me for any state that I'm in. And he's very supportive. And the thing I love most about my husband is that he loves me. Like he just loves Santina. That's literally it. I don't have to do anything else probably in this world, but just show up me. So my husband, he is truly my best friend. I can come to him for anything. And we of course have ups and downs and disagreements, and some days I might not like him and some days he might not like me, but he's still my best friend. And that I don't think that goes away.
No, it doesn't. that's another big quotable too that you said. One of the biggest things about him is he just loves you, like without performance or limits or requirements or whatever. And that I, someone out there needed to hear that. I don't know who. Someone definitely needed to hear you say that. Definitely. Um, could you talk to us about your book? What's the name of it? What it's about? For the person that doesn't even know you have a book out.
The name of my book is It's Already Yours. Go get it. And what I like to tell everyone is when I was writing this book, I thought I was going to name this book Heavy because I felt so heavy. Like, I got to get this off of me. I
Mm.
got to get this weight off me. So in the beginning of the book, I mentioned the word heavy a whole lot, if anyone notices it. And as I continued to write, God literally told me, it's already yours. And I was like, okay, it's already mine. Yes, I'm writing the book. I know it's already mine. And he was like, go get it. And so I literally at that moment, I went to my little heading on my document. I changed it to it's already yours. Go get it. So it's all about overcoming obstacles, removing barriers, knowing people in your life. I like to say it's about using my life story and biblical principles to help you go from where you are to where you want to be.
I just love that you say that phrase because prior to this, and even concurrently, I have a podcast connected with our church or whatever, and that's part of our the tagline to help take you from where you are to where you want to be. So that really resonates with me. That's very important that you said that. Um, this came up with another guest when we talk about growing and moving forward, seasons and things. One thing that's come up is about the importance of who is in your circle, who your friends are, who's around you, and maybe outgrowing some or whatever. Could you talk to us at all about the importance of who's around you, with you, connected to you?
Oh, it is very, very important to have the right people around you. And you may have known someone for 20 years, 30 years. They've been your bestie since middle school. You love them to life, but they aren't meant for what you're going to, where you're going. They're not meant for that season. And that doesn't mean that you don't love them. That doesn't mean there's any animosity. That means that you all can't have those daily conversations that were pointless. That means that you can't be at their beck and call. It means that you have to be where you are right now and allow them to be where they are. So, in my book, I say, does it come to direct or does it come to distract? So is this direction or is it distraction? And when you look at it and say, hey, I talked on the phone for 2 hours and nothing was accomplished. It wasn't spiritually feeding. It wasn't emotionally feeding me. It wasn't doing anything to make either one of us better. Like, it has to be reciprocated. Then you have to decide, like, what's the purpose? You have to have people around you who not only want to see you win, but help you win. It's good to have like people that encourage you, but you also need people that motivate you. So I feel like an encourager is someone who says, you're doing good, Santina. You're on a roll. You got it. But then a motivator say, Santina, you can be doing more. Have you thought about this?
Mm.
So that's how I look at things. Like, I need an encourager and I need a motivator. And if you can't go with me in my next season, I still love you. It's no love lost.
How was that? How do you even start a conversation with someone, essentially telling them that you're, I don't know, moving on or drawing back? What? Oh my, because I hear you. I believe everything you're saying. I know that's true. How do you open that conversation?
You have to know your people. So some people you can be straightforward with. You can say, you know what, I don't do that anymore. I can't go there anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. And some people you can't say that with. So you have to, when the situation arises and they want you to do something, like, no, I don't want to do that. So you don't have to like give a disclaimer before time. So when it arises, then you can say, you know what, I'm not with that. And then I feel like people will catch on. They'll stop inviting you. They'll stop asking you eventually.
Okay, I see that. No, that's good. I see that. All right. Again, from my work with kids and things like that, I find that sometimes people know that there's more. whether it's whatever it is, it's a degree, it's moving somewhere, it's whatever, but they're afraid of leaving behind their group because they know their group's not going to understand that or not going to want to go where I go. How would you even coach someone who knows there's more, whatever more means, but they're afraid of, like, no one in their neighborhood, their family, whatever, has ever done this thing. They're not going to go with me. How would you talk to someone who's in that middle, if I'm making sense?
So you are making perfect sense. So in my opinion, if you feel like you should be moving forward and then the people, you don't want to leave your people behind, you don't have to leave them behind. You can take them with you. You just have to take them on a different route than you're going. So they can be a part of your team. I always think about LeBron James, when people say, you know what, is lonely at the top or things like that, or you can't take your people with you, because I heard a story about him giving his friends jobs. Like, he employed his friends. So if you want to go here with me, then you're going to have to be an asset to what I'm building. So if I want to grow and I want to take my people with me, because you don't want to leave everybody and you need some A1s around you to be like, you know what, that person's shady. I really do have your back. Then I'm
Hmm.
gonna need you to get the credentials so you can be with me. So we can grow together. So if I am the first person that's going to be the game changer and decide to do something different, and I have my bestie, I have my homegirl, my homeboy, whoever, and they like, well, you moving kind of different. Move with me. What do you want to do? How can we build this together? Like, you can grow with people. It doesn't have to be lonely at the top. That's only if you want to leave people behind.
Okay. That I love that. That's a perspective I have not heard before, but I get it. And that LeBron example is the perfect one, that they can grow with you.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I believe that, because some people you do have to leave behind. Like, you do, but when you don't want to leave somebody, you like, you know what? I don't want to leave them. Then make them an asset to what you're doing.
Got that. That's good. That's powerful. Um, Now you are a mom, correct?
Yes.
What are the ages of your kids? Boy, girl, what? Tell us
So
whatever you
I
want to tell us about them.
Okay, I gave birth to one daughter. She is 15 years old. Her name is Skylar. And then from my husband, I inherited two boys, Rondell and Deron, and they are 22 and 19. But I raised the both of them with my husband. So they're all mine, but I only gave birth to one. But being a mom is my, like, greatest joy.
Hmm.
Like, I love I love being a mom. Like, I don't know why. Maybe because I lost my mother at such a young age, and I always wanted, like, I always had thoughts in my head of things that I would do with my mother or how my mother would love me. So that's what I try to convey to my children. And I didn't have such a great stepmother. So I was like, I never wanted to treat my bonus children how I felt. So I just found joy in giving them what I thought was what a mother should be.
Well, and you kind of answered the next question for me, because I was going to ask you what things from your experience as a child influence how you parent these kids, but you kind of touched on that already. Speaking of kids and young people, now you were a middle school teacher for a time, is that correct?
Yes, for 4 years, I gave in my resignation in June this past year.
Got it.
Um,
And
it was a
okay.
great experience.
Well, I was going to ask you, because seasons change and you moved on to something else, but what can you say you learned, or at least had uh, emphasized for you, about that generation, that age group, from your middle school? And as a matter of fact, and I know all the kids matter, but particularly about the girls, what have you learned as far as girls of that age and from that your experience?
Oh, I learned that girls are lost. They're so lost.
I hear this often. Could you explain that for people who don't know what you mean? But I hear this often.
So at the middle school where I worked, I started a club called Sister Sister, and it was for the sixth, seventh, and eighth graders to give them the basic skills and attention that they needed. Um, they are so lost in the aspect of even what love is, what family is, and not love from an intimate perspective from a male or female, if that's their choice, but what family love is, what sitting down and having dinner with your family. It's just so many things that they don't understand. They don't understand self-respect. They don't understand how valuable that they are outside of their looks. They don't understand that we are one. We're women, we're girls, like we should be a team. They don't understand that because um in the community that I worked in, it's, low class, and unfortunately, they had that mentality as well, the poverty mindset. So when you think about the poverty mindset, you think about not being given examples of what sisterhood truly is, because it's almost every man for themselves instead of, I don't feel like it's how it used to be when the community came together. My biggest thing was when COVID started and so many parents said, well, I don't have anybody to watch my kids. My kids are at home alone. And I'm thinking, well, your homegirl doesn't even work. So why doesn't she keep all the kids while you're at work? So young girls aren't seeing that sisterhood of coming together and really depending on one another so we all can grow. They're lost. If I can sum them up, I would say lost as a whole. There
Yes,
are a few specks in there that, get it and they come from strong families. And then the majority is like, nah.
I hear this. I mean, I see this, and I hear this from almost anyone that works with girls of that age. That's the word that comes up, the
Mm-hmm.
lost aspect. Mm.
It's unfortunate, but it can be changed. And I think it's my generation's responsibility and fault to a certain extent. Like, where did we drop the ball? Like, when did this happen? When did we say you can't correct my child? When did we say that, oh, my child, they need this, they deserve this? When did we give them this sense of entitlement? Like, when did it happen? We went from having very strict parents to now we're just lackadaisical, like whatever.
My personal thought about that is that around, I don't know which generation's feet to lay it at, but it's some generation in there, they recognize that some things were done wrong too harshly, maybe in a previous generation, but then they overcorrected. And instead of bringing things to the middle, they recognize the problem, but they maybe went too far the other direction, whether that's
Right.
discipline or giving kids too many things because I didn't have much, going to extremes. And that might be kind of the root of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's no balance really. It's
Yeah,
no balance. And that's what I try to have with my children is a balance. Like I'm still, you have chores. I don't believe in allowance. Your allowance is that I allow you to live in my house.
yeah,
So that may
okay.
that may be harsh for somebody, but you have chores. You have to pull your weight. But I do have family meetings where they can speak their voice and they can say, "Hey, I don't agree with this, and here are my reasons why." And we can agree to disagree, and I might can bend a little bit, and I might not,
I
but you
got it.
still have a voice. So I think some parents just let their kids do whatever they want to. And a
Uh,
lot of kids are raising themselves. Even speaking with my daughter, she was telling me one day, she was like, most of her friends cook for themselves. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And she was like, yeah, they'll either eat like noodles for dinner or hot pockets. And I'm like, every day? Like what? It was like, yeah, most of their parents work the night shift or the evening shift. So I know the parents are doing what they need to do to provide for them, but I don't know how it's benefiting the children
oh, no, I hear
without
that.
the like, yeah, like the lack of family dynamic. So I don't
Okay.
know.
Well, I want to give you an imaginary situation to kind of it's imaginary, but it's kind of based on different things you've talked about, either shared in your book or talked about here. Because I've seen this before. Let's say maybe a friend has a child who's 18. They're graduating high school this week, and they want you to talk to them about their future. They feel a little, the grades are fine, they're going to graduate, but they feel a little directionless, be it a boy or a girl. And this is some friend who knows you, knows your work, and it says, Santina, would you just take her to lunch and just talk to her about her future or his future? What, I know I'm kind of making up a situation, but what do you think? What would some of that conversation revolve around?
Well, my first question I would ask is, who are they? And when I say who are you, it's like, are you a trustworthy person? Are you a loving person? Are you kind? Are you organized? Are you lazy? Like, what type of person are you? So, who are you? And I think asking someone who they are, it not only brings out their strengths, but it brings out their weaknesses. So, when you're able to identify your weaknesses, you know what you might want to do and probably can't do. So, if the student's like, or the child is like, well, you know what? I do want to go to college, Santina, but I don't know. I'm gonna tell them, don't pick an 8 o'clock class because you're lazy. Don't do that because you know who
I
you
needed you
are.
about in 1985. I should have sat down and talked with you because I took 8 o'clock classes and almost never made it. Goodness.
Like it doesn't make sense. And then ask them, what do they want? Like I tell my children all the time, I want you to pursue your purpose, your passion. I want you to be impactful and meaningful. But I need you to do something that is going to afford you the lifestyle that you want to live because I'm not going to take care of you. So, if this child came from a privileged home where they used to getting what they want, their parents always said yes, they had the newest of everything. What do you want to do to maintain that lifestyle? You're going to have to do something because your taste is getting more expensive. So, what do you love to do? And how can you maximize that to get what you really, really want? That's it. I don't
I
think
see
it's
that.
like really rocket science or anything. It's like really
Hmm.
just listening to people. Like, don't try to live other people's lives for them. Listen to what they want. People will show you and tell you what they want. You just got to pay attention.
Got that. I get that. And I hope a young person will get that as well. That's you kind of decoded what seeing people make very mysterious, and you kind of gave us a roadmap for that. Can you tell us as we get ready to close here? This has been such a thrill for me because again, two things I want to throw in here real quick. Oh, good, I have enough time too. When you were my student, back in eighth grade or whatever, I did not see, and maybe it was my own blindness, or maybe you just weren't showing this, the kind of confidence, the ability to speak like this. It's not that I didn't think it was there. It's just not something you showed. Where and when did this more outward, able to speak and present yourself? Where did this Santina come from? Was she
Uh,
just balled up in there the whole time or what? Because I'm mad. I got cheated. I didn't get to see all this back at Holly Hill. So where did this come
she
from?
didn't exist. She didn't exist.
Okay.
So I am naturally an introvert. If anybody who knows you, who knows me, like outside of social media, I'm like not going to start the conversation. I'm kind of standoffish. I'm like, okay, my husband really is my wingman. He will like get me in the groove of talking to people and things like that. So when I'm confident about what I'm talking about, when I know what I'm talking about, and where I am right now, I know what I'm talking about. I
Okay.
believe in what I'm talking about. So I'm able to say it. I'm not going to talk if I'm unsure. So when I'm sure, I speak. Not that I was unsure in eighth grade because your class is actually one of my best classes. I have a few people that I remember. My seventh grade English teacher, Miss Combs, I believe, she was impactful in my life. And then eighth grade, you were impactful in my life. And then in high school, I had Miss Woolcheck. She was an English teacher as well. Um, So I had impactful teachers, and I think you got a good part of me.
Oh no, not that I didn't get a good part, but I didn't get all this. I got good, but I didn't get all of this. But that's part of growth and
She
exposure.
wasn't secure enough.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. All right, I won't be mad. I'll calm down. I'll wind it back. Ms. Proctor, I am very pleased that you were on the show today. Thank you so much. In the couple minutes I have, can you tell us what's in the future? What's next? Are you touring for your book? What are you doing? You have the floor.
So every month I am in a different city or state at like different vendor events or women's empowerment events. Some of these events I speak at, some of them I'm just a vendor. I'll be in Maryland on September 24th speaking and being a vendor. I'm should be finished with my second book tomorrow if I really write tomorrow. And it's a little different. It's called it's not a vacation, it's a lifestyle. 14 days of personal development. So it's kind of like a journal and guide, things like that. It's kind of a mini coaching session.
I hear that.
At the end of this year, I am planning a women's empowerment event called Women Making Waves. And it's not going to be your traditional women's empowerment where it's watered down with vendors. You're going to have different sessions and things like that so you can learn with different topics like women making waves in ministry or single parenting or finances, just different things. And so you'll be able to do 2 sessions, 45 minutes each. You will be able to have some shopping time with different vendors, but that's not my focus. I really want you to grow. And January next year, I should be in Daytona Beach. A young lady is planning an event. And so she actually reached out to me today for my headshot and stuff. So I'm just growing, growing, growing.
That is exciting to see. Well, Ms. Proctor, Ms. Santina Proctor, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. And I just look forward to keeping up with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing that you do.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. It has been an absolute pleasure. Like, I never would have thought, like, all these years later, life would come full circle and I'm with Mr. Temple. Like, it's so crazy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.